All right, high rollers, no intro needed tonight. He doesn't like intros anyway. We've had him on before. He's back. Limon, welcome back to the show, man. Appreciate your time tonight.
Hey, no problem.
So much to talk about since last we spoke. You recently sent out an epic series of tweets about the poker industrial complex. I found it fascinating. I want to talk to you about that in a second, but first, off the top, did you have any interest? Did you watch the Kate Hall Mike Dentale match at all?
No, now that computers can beat humans at heads-up poker, why would I tune into the JV game? It's like watching Foxy boxing. I'm interested in elite athletes, mental or physical. I'll watch whoever plays a computer and nothing else.
Well, listen, Kate Hall was just voted the Female Player of the Year.
Yeah, that and $3 will get you a cup of coffee.
It's good to have you back, man. It's good to have you back. Okay, so you didn't watch the big grudge match, but I'm wondering, I got to ask you about the whole thing at Live at the Bike with the Doug Polk week. I was watching your poker sesh that night, and you brought up the topic of big timing. And I want to tell you a story, something that happened to me. It drives me nuts in poker. The reason I want to tell you this story is because when you were going off, you triggered a thought. I was at the Commerce one time playing in the $300 buy-in game. I can't remember the blinds, 2-5 or 2-3 or something like that, but it was a $300 buy-in. And one of the guys that plays higher limits, up in the upper level there, he came down. He was on tilt because he had been losing. And he came down to splash with us guys. And he sat beside me. I was on his left. And I saw him. He was all in every hand, and he was losing and losing and losing. And he kept reaching into his pocket, and I saw $1,000 chips. I saw a whole bunch of $100 chips. And, in a 300 game, that's a lot of money. So he's all in every hand. Finally, the young whiz kid over across from me, he gets pocket tens, gets it all in against this guy. I think he had king deuce offsuit. Of course, he hits his king, right? And what does this kid, this know-it-all, this, I guess, internet player do? He berates him and tells him how bad he played. And you know what this high roller did? He says, you know what, kid? I was willing to lose a couple $1,000s here because I'm on tilt, but I don't like you. And I'm going back to play with the big boys. And when he left, I said to the kid, what are you doing? If he's so bad, be nice to him. Keep him at the table. You'll get that money. And when you were talking about big timing, I don't know if what I just described as big timing, but that's the thought that triggered when you were going off.
Well, it all sort of comes back to, this all sort of like dovetails, and it's sort of the same problems that poker has. It's problems of ego and narcissism, and to a certain extent, for a lot of people who got into it post-poker boom, it's about like the loss of their life to a certain extent. And just to bring it back to Liberatus, the computer, what this brings to the forefront for a lot of people is, wow, I spent a lot of time learning how to do this menial task that can be done better by a computer now. Maybe the dudes who were telling me that the real part about poker and the real way you make money in poker is about building relationships and getting in good games, maybe they were right all along, because to be the best poker player in the world right now, you basically have to be a computer. Being the best poker player in the world right now is a joke. It's just a joke. And it's always been a joke. And the people making the most money were never the best poker players. The people making the most money were the people who got invited to the best games. And when I started playing poker, and when a lot of people started playing poker before the boom, we knew that we were basically semi-criminal degenerates. There was no role models of like clean-cut young guys that went to college to look up to come into poker, and poker was never advertised as a career. Poker was sort of the seedy underbelly of the gambling world. Then once it started getting advertised as a career by the poker industrial complex, you brought in a lot of young guys who should have been accountants or IT, worked behind an IT desk, or in a cubicle somewhere, decided that they were going to be professional poker players, but they just were never cut out for it. So they constantly have to prove to everybody that they didn't make huge life mistake. They got to bring their mommy to poker tournaments to let their mommy know that they didn't make some giant life mistake. They gotta like that they didn't waste $100,000 on college to come and hang out with a bunch of degenerates playing poker. So they came up with this myth of being a great poker player. And that myth it was never true. It was always a joke, and now it's being really torn asunder by the new poker world, which is basically going back to its dog-eat-dog roots, number one, and number two, being the best poker player is really being revealed for what it always was, a joke, a complete joke.
Well, I want to talk about this poker industrial complex. One of the things you write, and you just mentioned it there, that it's duped a generation who don't belong in a casino into a poker career. So you're saying here they are, they've made these choices, they've seen the big wins on TV, the moneymaker, and all the subsequent $1 million scores, and they think, I can do that. If I get away from this stockbroker job and go into poker, it's easy money and easy career. Now they're there, and you're saying they're waking up to the fact that, what have I done? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they got a couple years of empty resume pages. They still got some student loans to pay off, and they realize that they look at colored rectangles for a living, okay? And looking at colored rectangles for a living wasn't all they said that it was cracked up to be. And so it's a constant justification of this horrific career choice. And this is where you get these problems with poker and sort of what poker is coming up against right now. Poker should have always been marketed the way that all gambling is marketed. You don't see the casinos marketing blackjack as a game that you're supposed to learn as a skill and come in and be a pro at. They fucking don't want you anywhere near the casino if you can actually play blackjack or count cards. Roulette, craps, same thing. It's marketed as fun, entertainment, trying your luck, partying, and so on and so forth. But because a lot of people who shouldn't have had any place near a casino were in a casino, they wanted to market it as a career because it justified their life decisions that they couldn't quite handle because mommy and daddy couldn't handle it, that they were a degenerate in a casino. They wanted to market it as, no, this is a regular career that normal people do. But it's not a regular career that normal people do. Never has been and never will be. Poker should have always been marketed as a gamble. And poker can be a lot of fun, and you can make a lot of money at it as your side job, as a serious hobbyist. I mean, I was writing this stuff in 2008, 2007. And it's really coming to the forefront right now. I mean, it's really coming to the forefront. A lot of people who took the actual act of looking at colored rectangles seriously have to look in the mirror right now and say, wow, that was dumb. That didn't make any sense. That's just it's nothing like what I thought it was going to be. And you see it every day. But people busto, people on the rail, people begging, people scamming. You got some stupid fucking poker awards that you mentioned earlier where a bunch of pimps and hoes show up to pat each other on the back and ask each other for the money that they're due. It's very ironic that the guy that runs the damn thing was having to beg for money to keep it going. Got called out by other poker players.
Let me bring it back to Doug Polk because, again, I find this a fascinating topic. And believe me, Limon, I respect you. You've been around for a long time playing cash games. You've survived. Anyone who does that has my respect. So when you talk, I listen. And you went off about this big timing notion that he wasn't on time for your scheduled interview.
Right.
You were going to play heads up. And basically what you're saying from your perspective is that you're a cash game guy. You spot a fish, you keep him at the table, you be nice to him, which brings me back to my example. I was so mad at that young kid because here we had a guy who wanted to blow off some steam, so let's make him be happy. He's acknowledging that he's on tilt. Let's keep him happy, let's make him have some fun, and we might win some money. So, you've got a heads-up match with Doug Polk. You're telling the world that it's easy money because you're the dog, and you felt big-timed because he didn't respect the fact that he should have been on time. You're saying it's easy money, you be on time, you treat the fish well. Is that right?
Well, yeah, that's what I said. I mean, I guess you can go watch it somewhere. I don't know where. It exists somewhere. But we both made a negative EV play. His negative EV play was to come on my show and be a sport and take the beating from the audience and answer the silly questions and begrudgingly entertain all of my fucking theories. And my negative EV play was to play a heads-up match with one of the greatest human players obviously not even a good heads-up player at this point. It depends on how many versions of Liberatus have been downloaded. But he's one of the better human players, and I'm not one of the better human heads-up players, I don't think. I don't know, because I don't play heads-up. Heads-up's stupid. It's a waste of time in a live setting. So, whatever. I'll take a little negative EV gamble. He takes a little negative EV gamble. We both make some money on the back end. But, he had decided that he was going to big-time me, and you just don't big-time the fish. And very rarely in my life have I gotten to be the fish. So it was fun being the fish once. Because I've seen fish all my life. I have to watch these fish go off on professional poker players. And the professional poker player just has to sit and take it. Because they know, or the good professional poker players know, that I got to take it because this is the guy that pays my bills, So in this instance, in this heads-up match, I'm the fish. And you got to treat the fish with respect. And I gave him a little lesson on that. He is coming to grips, I think, with a lot of realities about poker right now. I mean, he's going to be a YouTube star instead of going and grinding cash at the casino. And that's a smart move by him. But he's still trying to pimp the poker industrial complex messages for his YouTube stardom, whereas I don't pimp that shit. I just tell it the way it is, man. I just tell it the way it is. Poker's a heck of a hobby, and it's a fucking shit bag job. And tournament poker is a fucking farce. It's a complete farce. But the reason that it persists is because there's a lot of people who gave up their lives to be professional poker players, and they need to convince somebody that it wasn't a bad decision. So even though they're fucking living hand to mouth, and they're in makeup, and they're swapping like crazy, and everything didn't turn out the way it was supposed to turn out, when they finally get to lift some goofbag trophy, they need to tell everybody, oh, you see, I did it. It was all worth it. It was this great fucking thing. And then the next thing you know, they're begging for a buy-in at the next tournament stop because all that did was get them out of makeup after they paid off all their backers.
I want you, if you can, to reverse roles there because I do think it's an important point. I'm fascinated by the idea of table selection in a live setting, how live pros, the unknown guys that show up every day and make a solid living at it approach the game. If you were Doug Polk in that situation and he was you, what would have happened there?
Oh, I would have done everything perfectly, man. I would have been on time to that show. I would have put on a great show. I would have made people like me, hopefully. I would have made people want to gamble with me, hopefully. I would have maybe hustled it to get maybe an extra hour, an extra couple more buy-ins from myself. I had agreed to one $10,000 buy-in and 3 hours of play. I think if he could have been really nice, he might have sweet-talked me into 4 hours and $20,000 worth of buy-ins. Because the fish have the money. The fish just wanted to be treated right.
I think this is very interesting because it's not something you find online nowadays. There's so many training videos, training sites, all the different programs that the online guys can use, the HUDs, the trackers, all that stuff. And yet the live cash game pros certainly have the ability to make those relationships and be in those juicy action-filled games, right?
Well, live cash game pros generally live in silence. Most of them you never heard of, you never really see much of. I mean, if you go poking around, you can figure out who Daniel Alai is or whatever. I mean, there's a few that are known, but most of them are Abe Mosseri or these guys. Most of them are just right under the surface. Those are the ones that maybe their names you've heard of, but there's a lot of guys like that that are just right under the surface. And these are guys that got into it either before the boom or just never ever entertained the thought that they were getting into poker to impress their mommy or hold up a trophy. They knew the game from early on. They knew that it was for misfits and malcontents, and that it's a hustle. It's a hustle from minute one till the very end. All it is a hustle, and getting yourself in good games and getting yourself in good positions is the name of the game. And being the world's best poker player ain't going to do much of that for you. It'll get you beat by a computer, and it'll get you thrown out of a lot of poker games if you don't handle yourself right. And the guys who make a lot of money playing poker every year, the cash game guys, are generally just sort of like the rake. You just don't barely even know they're there. And to the extent that you do know that they're there, it's because you like them. They are likable people who create likable scenarios They basically run the poker game like Steve Wynn runs a casino. A little bit of entertainment, and it's a way to lose yourself for a while, and if you give them a good gamble, they'll give you a good time.
All right, back to the poker industrial complex real quick. And by the way, folks, this is an epic series of tweets at Limon Poker on Twitter. 10 points, and you had a finally. But I want to quickly read 5 through 8 because they're very interesting. You write 5. Poker is pure gambling, sickness, release hobby, time killer for 99.999% of the people who do it and should only be promoted as such. 6. Wasn't meant for kids who should have been accountants and need to subject parents to attorney luck box to validate their horrible choices. 7. There are no mummies in poker. Poker is for antisocial malcontents and semi-criminals. Your mummy can't save you. Go back to your IT job. And 8. If you want to meet a cool, honest person in a casino, talk to someone who would never consider poker as a career and finds it laughable. I mean, you went all out on this series of tweets.
Yeah, I'm getting very, very tired of the poker industrial complex. It doesn't make me any money, okay? So there's no reason for me to promote it or lie about it. And here's something that most people don't know. Here's something that somebody who I actually think is a pretty nice and respectable and entertaining guy in, like, let's say, Dan Negreanu. Dan Negreanu promotes the shit out of the poker industrial complex, and at the end of any of his arguments about it or his promotions, he says, like, you have to grow the game. This is one of the huge myths of poker is that for professional poker players to make money, you have to grow the game. This is completely fucking false, okay? Before the poker boom, I was making lots of money playing poker, okay? We didn't need to grow the game. The games were great. Nobody knew how to play, and you basically were there with guys who bet the horses, and guys who wanted to have a drink, and guys who were getting away from their wife, and guys with serious gambling addictions, and some serious hobbyists. But there weren't really professionals. The whole concept of a professional poker player didn't really exist before maybe like 2000, before Full Tilt Poker. It was sort of like people started promoting this idea of poker as a career. So growing the game helps the poker industrial complex. It doesn't help actual cash grinders. Actual cash grinders don't know whether the game is growing or shrinking because they only need 8 other guys. That's all they need in the entire world is 8 other guys. As long as there's 8 other guys who are worse than me that want to play poker, the poker world is as big as it needs to be. It's at full size. So, and that's the way a lot of these private games run. The player pool might be 20 guys, and yet there's a couple pros making a lot of money off that game because they're in with the host. The poker industrial complex is a myth. It exists to perpetuate itself, and it exists to perpetuate tournament poker. Tournament poker isn't a way for anyone to make a living, and nobody makes a living at tournament poker. When I say nobody, there's probably some fucking unicorn that does. But when I say nobody, I really mean, like, basically, it's no way for anyone to make a living. It can be easily mathematically proven. And on top of that, because somebody's going to say, oh, what about Federal? What about Federal? Some bitch is going to be like, oh, fuck you, Lightning. I whack off the Federals every night. And it all has to be worth it, man. All the Kleenex has to be worth it, man. What about Federal? What about some motherfucker who just won a $250 million lottery? What about that guy? That guy's like 10 Federal. Look up to that guy, because it's the same fucking shit, man. Listen to this. You know why? You know the easiest way to prove this? The easiest way to prove this is this. They never tell you how much they bought in for. Never. That fucking shit is more secret than a fucking Illuminati, Area 51, fucking Roswell. The most secret thing in the entire fucking universe is how much they bought in for. Because if they started publishing all, like, you got this stupid GPI and the guy that fucking, he took money from Federal, the fucking Alec guy, whatever his name is, Alex or something. He does some fucking poker awards, like, who best poker player. We don't need to know who the best poker player is. It's some guy making a fucking shit ton of money in a private game somewhere. He doesn't give a fuck. The one thing that they won't tell you is, here's some poker awards I'd like to see. Highest number of buy-ins. Okay? There's you're not going to see. Most World Series without a cash. You know, when they start actually publishing the buy-ins for these global poker rankings, it's like, yay, I'm number one. I bought in for $1 million and won $1,000,001 or something. I bought in for $10 million and won $9 million. When they actually start publishing the buy-ins, then you will know that the fucking shit is real. But they'll never fucking put down the buy-ins, because if they put down the buy-ins, the poker industrial complex crashes. It just melts under its own weight, because then all the little fucking dick suckers, all the little fucking nitwits are going to be like, but I looked up to him and he has bought in for more than he's actually won. You know, the other thing they need to publish in the poker fucking GPI awards, how many backers do you have and how much are you in makeup? Because I actually consider that cheating, by the way. I take the one player to a hand rule to extend all the way to taking money, because poker is played with money.
Wait a minute. There's all these staking sites now. You're saying that in general is cheating?
I consider it unethical. I won't go as far as say it's cheating, but it's up there. It's very, very unethical. And here's the reason why. Poker's played for money. It's played for fucking money, dude. It's not played for matchsticks or twiddly dinks or thinky dunks or bonky wonks. It's played for cash money. And you know as well as I do, because you play in the cash games, when the money is real, it changes the way that people act about things.
Absolutely.
Sometimes a person will get way up in a session and they'll play differently. Sometimes they'll get stuck and they'll play differently. Sometimes if you know that a guy has a bunch of money in his pocket, you can make some decisions based on how you think he's going to play. You can start to correlate information about the money, okay? Money causes a lot of psychological interference in your head. A lot of writing has been done about this in the stock market and how people deal with the stocks that have gained and stocks that have lost and how they chase and yada, yada, yada.
You see it all the time in cash games. A guy has tripled up and he wants to sit on the chips. He tightens up, right? Another guy's losing. All of a sudden he wants to get it back. He loosens up. And cash game pros like yourself, it's your job to spot the ebbs and flows in these games and take advantage of these people.
Yes, and they're supposed to be playing one man to a hand, okay? This is the cardinal rule of poker, is one player to a hand. Since money is basically a game piece that's used in the game just as much as cards and just as much as people, money should also be one to a hand, okay? It changes the entire dynamics of the game when people are trading with each other in the game, swapping with each other in the game, playing off combined bankrolls. It changes everything about the game. And so I think it should have to be public knowledge if you're not playing with your own money or you don't have 100% of yourself. That's something that the fucking GPI should start working on. But the problem with that is it also destroys the poker industrial complex. Because now you start to say, wait, that guy who just won that high roller only had 10% of himself or 5% of himself? Well, that's not baller at all. That's not going to get some freaking fanboy to like pull out the Kleenex and the freaking Jergens to find out that their hero had 5% of himself. They're not going to pull out the Kleenex and the Jergens to find out their freaking hero has bought in for more than he's won. And this is why the poker industrial complex is a complete lie, and it's ruined a lot of lives. And it's ruined poker to a certain extent.
Wow, okay, wow, I love it, Limon. Lastly, in this epic series of tweets, you write, finally, if you truly know anything about the pro grind and are promoting it as High Five Bros, Tourney, Baller, Sushi Fest, you are a parasite. Now, that's a strong word.
That's right, they are. The poker industrial complex is parasites. They parasitically live off of the poker community, and they sap money out of the poker community. The poker community is, the way it always has been, cash game grinders running their little area like their own little casino, giving the people who come in to gamble a fair gamble and a good time, not people creating a fake bubble, a poker bubble based on credit and swapping and borrowing and lies. I don't see any good for this, and I think it's time people start calling out the poker industrial complex for what it actually is, because the idea that we need to grow poker is a fucking joke. Nobody fucking needs that. The pros don't need it. We don't need it. All I need is good fair gamble from good people playing on their own goddamn money, and I don't need a bunch of people sifting money out of the poker community for their dalliances in poker tournament fame. So it's a deep rabbit hole when you start to go down it, because you also get into addiction too, and addiction is another serious problem in this whole thing. And I haven't really started talking about that yet because I haven't wrapped my brain completely around it yet. But we just don't need it. I'm going to say the poker industrial complex has ruined a lot more lives than it's helped, and it hasn't helped the average professional poker player who's been around pre-boom until now. People who weren't around before the boom don't know what it was like. But it was basically a little gold mine, and nobody knew what the fuck they were doing. And everybody treated the game right and with respect. And now people treat the game bad. They treat it with disrespect. They treat the players with disrespect. The poker economy is drying up, and a lot of people are getting left to the side. And I'm not one of them, by the way. I've been fully divested. I'm a hobbyist at this point. So I can say this from a hobbyist perspective, that none of this did anyone any good. And the poker industrial complex just needs to fucking dry up and go away. If they're fucking serious, and some bitch is gonna fucking complain about this, if you're a member of the poker industrial complex and you're serious, start publishing the fucking buy-ins, start publishing the swaps, start publishing the combined bankrolls, start publishing all of that stuff, and then I will take you serious. Until then, all you are is snake oil salesmen, and you're hurting the game.
Abe Limon, appreciate your time. On Twitter, it's at Limon Poker. You got to check him out on YouTube. There's no more pokers. Are you playing at the Commerce, by the way?
Yeah, that's where I play, like 99%.
Well, listen, man, I appreciate your time. It sounds like you're very frustrated with poker, but we want to have you back on when you wrap your head around this addiction problem, okay? Thanks a lot for your time, buddy.
Yeah. Thank you, and enjoy your time at the casino, please.